So because it's so difficult for anyone to understand um, what it's like to have a third house Neptune, if they don't have a third house Neptune, it's really difficult for a third house Neptune person to be in a working environment or in a school environment or any place in which their third house Neptune is just not supported or understood. So I find that a third house Neptune makes it really difficult to be in this kind of situation, and a third house Neptune often leads to abuse in the workplace, abuse on a mental level. And the thing about abuse, first of all, is that no one knows that it's happening. Mental abuse is something that nobody can see. Abuse in general, but especially on a mental level, is something that people aren't seeing happen, so they're going to obviously deny, which is Neptune, that it's happening to the third house Neptune person. So the third house Neptune person in this situation of people in their environment blaming them for being crazy, assuming things about them, that they're going to harm people, or kind of just not understanding them, they get a lot of blame, and this is very taxing to a third house Neptune person who's just trying to make it in the world. And it's hard enough as it is too to think straight with this placement and to deal with all the abuse in general from the entire world. It's generally a placement that definitely causes a lot of stress in this area. The third house Neptune, the reason obviously why it's so hard to explain it to people is because Neptune is seeing, and people don't see what goes on in a situation of abuse, verbal or mental. So they assume that everything looks good on the outside. It's like putting a happy face on someone suffering, which is kind of a Neptune theme. It's a sort of dissolving of boundaries, and people don't have boundaries with a third house Neptune person, or the third house Neptune person doesn't have good boundaries with others as well. So as the more a third house Neptune person goes out in the world and actually tries to speak about what's happening to them, the more people just go, oh, they're really not mentally together. And they get this label of mentally ill or crazy or unstable put on them all the time. And this is what leads to so much abuse in the workplace or in a school environment or any place in which you're on a daily basis you're working with other people. So an example of this would be that something really bad is going on for the third house Neptune person. They're being mentally abused in some way, and they go to, let's say, an authority figure to talk to them about some of the stuff in which they're facing. And what does the authority figure in this situation do? They deny that the person who has the third house Neptune, they deny that person is even having any problems at all, and they're saying it's just how you're dealing with it, it's just how you're seeing it. This isn't really happening, we're not really doing anything wrong. And this is a constant cycle. This is a constant vicious cycle with Neptune, is that people are getting abused and no one can see what is happening to them. People are getting fucked with, people are getting hurt, people are getting blamed for things that aren't their fault, and no one will do anything about it because they don't see it actually happening. This is a problem not just me, but a lot of people who get the label of a mental illness. And then they're trying to just make it through their lives by going to school or working. So this is what's so hard about having third house Neptune, is that people just don't understand. People just don't see what the person actually has to deal with. in their day-to-day interactions. It's kind of like we're invisible. And this can be good. This also has its upsides too. For example, I go to school and we're supposed to have a uniform, and since I've been so unstable with it, people have stopped noticing whether I'm wearing a uniform when I go to school, just so I can get everything done. And so I get to not wear my uniform while everyone else is wearing their uniform, which is kind of funny because no one notices. And another problem with having third house Neptune is that there's so much insecurity around speaking, mainly because if a Neptune third house person does try to speak about something that is going wrong for them, and some kind of injustice that's happening for them, they get a giant sort of denial thrown on them, that anything's actually happening that's wrong for them. So the more we try to speak up about what's happening to us, the more we get people saying, this isn't actually happening to you. You're just crazy. So the angrier it makes some of us feel, and then the more crazy, it's just a crazy-making sort of placement. So there's a lot of insecurity around speaking up for what's really going on and what's really happening because of so many times in the person's life that they aren't heard. So when a Neptune third house person finally does start to speak up, it leads to more people going, whoa, watch out. This person's going crazy. Because typically people with Neptune in the third also have Pluto in their first house. But I think the more serious problem here is having Neptune in the third and constantly getting abused and nobody ever doing anything about it. And when you try to speak up about it, people just look at you like you have 5 heads and say you're crazy. So this is my explanation of some of the troubles that third house Neptune people have to go through. I hope this video wasn't too mentally scattered and so on and so forth. But this is a major issue in general for most people out there in the world who have mental illness, who are getting abused and treated differently because of it. I think it's wrong, and people really need to stop. People really need to stop and look at themselves more. And the world is such an insensitive and cold place. People really need to stop being such jerks and start having more compassion for each other. And that's what I have to say. Thank you for listening, if you did.